can we start one season where there isn't an article that drops where it's tearing apart the organization or revealing something or an injury? I mean, we've already had Spencer Horwitz. I mean, at other points in time last year, maybe not, as big of a deal. Dowry Moretta. Year before that, there was the conflict concerning Brian Reynolds and his contract. I mean, even last year, there was Paul Skeens and should he start in the majors and different types of stuff. We already had the Horowitz injury. We got another injury, Scott. We got another article kind of pointing out all of just, I don't know if it's the bad stuff that's going on with this team or just the bad stuff that's going on with MLB. I just want to watch baseball. I just want to enjoy watching my team. And I guess I can't. I guess we can't, man. I don't know.
We just can't have nice things. We
No,
can't have enjoyment.
we're not allowed to have fun here. We're a Pirates podcast. We're not a Dodgers podcast. We're not a Yankees podcast. We're a Pirates podcast.
And as a Pirates podcast, we have lost less money than the Pittsburgh Pirates organization because that's the thing that came out is that they are losing money and that they've gone into debt.
Yeah, which is something that, I mean, when I step back and think about it, it's something that doesn't completely surprise me. I remember when the article came out about the Oakland Athletics losing money, and this was like surrounding the pandemic and different types of stuff. There was, rumors of teams having to take loans to kind of get through the financials of that, of not having fans, not having concessions. I mean, obviously, some of the costs kind of go away with that because of travel and not having to go to all of these different games and type of stuff for at least half of a season. Maybe the upkeep of a stadium to a degree and not having to pay the cleaning crew because nobody's making a mess. So that wasn't really a surprise to me. And to a degree, this isn't like a total shock to me. Like, I feel like a lot of people were kind of taken aback. I mean, anybody that listened to, DK's Daily Shot, he's a guy that's been kind of like a big proponent of, the team should spend more. There's more money to spend. And I think that this was like the first time he was like nearly speechless on his program, is because I don't think he saw this one coming. To me, yeah, it's a little bit of a surprise that it's a loss. I thought maybe it would be a small profit. But yeah, I mean, with the payroll, with the pandemic that happened, kind of building back up from that. Yeah, I mean, the money that was supposedly saved or, whatever it may be in the first few years of the rebuild, I mean, maybe there wasn't really a ton of money there to be saved.
And the collapse of regional sports networks. Their TV deal was cut in half, according to DK. And I think that as much as we dislike Mr. Nutting, and we try not to have his back if we can help it, or at least I personally, because we want what's best for our team. Something that was mentioned in the article is that he doesn't get paid. He doesn't take a salary or dividends as owner of the team. And so that's part of it. I think that it's a shock to everybody that they've been crying poverty, and turns out, it wasn't a lie. But I think the hope we've all hoped is, okay, we can watch some bad baseball with some cheap teams where they're getting waiver claims that are starters. That, okay, well, you get what you pay for, 100 loss team, whatever. But the promise, implied or spoken, has always been we're saving the money, and so when we're ready to spend it, and when we're in a position that spending that money makes a difference, a bigger difference, it'll be there. Kind of finding out that it's not.
And that makes the trade deadline and the comments that Ben Cherington, stuff that we've talked about many times, about him saying we had to kind of almost wait for these deals to come through before we could make our own deals that we wanted to make, get Martin Perez off the books, to kind of bring in IKF, different things like that, moving that kind of money around. And yeah, I do remember Charrington saying, and I think that any GM, if I went back and looked at the quote, is that it would probably say something like, "There's the hope that the money will be there, when we are there to move it forward." Yeah, I mean, and other stuff that was in that article. Everybody, I mean, you probably should go. That's an article you need to sit down and read. It can't really be paraphrased, but just picking out stuff and the back and forth that we had before the show was that there's those types of things in there that we've talked about. He mentioned Milwaukee getting $20 million from their parking alone. The Pirates finally having a share of a parking lot. If anybody's ever seen it down there, it's a Champions Garage. I mean, it's a maybe a little bit more of an expensive garage, but I mean they're getting, I think it was something like whatever it was, like 200,000 from that. That's like kind of a pretty big difference. If you go, if anybody's ever been to a Dodgers game or even watched a Dodgers game where they span in and see how many parking spots there are there, I mean, just different things like that. If you've been to a Cubs game, I mean, pretty much the owning like pretty much all of Wrigleyville and different events, places that are in there, the Cardinals, Ballpark City, everything that's out of there, and having seating and different stuff. I mean, there's other stuff that people are bringing in, and the Pirates right now, it's pretty much tickets and concessions, and it's only a portion of all of those because they still have to pay because there's a contract with, I think it's Aramark who kind of brings in the food. So you're still paying for the food and probably the employees. And it's maybe like a 50-50 split of that revenue. So yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of stuff that's happened. And I know the Pirates, I know there's been a delay on it. There's supposed to be a restaurant underneath one of the condo buildings that was built near PNC Park that the Pirates are supposed to be owners of. There's supposed to be that little venue with a big screen that can have concerts and outdoor activities, and different stuff that's supposed to be a revenue generator outside of PNC Park. But yeah, dude, when you go there and you pay your $20 for parking, the Pirates are not seeing 1 cent of that. And that's, I think, something that, I mean, I knew, but as a Pirates fan, probably going to a game, your general Pirates fan is just like, oh, here's your $20 nutting for me to park my car. And it's like, no, it's not going to him whatsoever.
Think of the missed opportunity for the McClatchy ownership when that was all parking lot. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are old enough to remember when PNC Park first opened and just the sea of parking lots that was surrounding it that are now garages and restaurants and bars and stage AE. There was a great opportunity for them to just gobble that all up and be the landlords that allowed these companies to come in and build on their land and charge them exorbitant rent, I'm sure, because of the prime real estate and all the events that happened there. Maybe they would have had to split it with the Steelers. Maybe who knows? But it could have been a more like a Padres situation because everybody compares media sizes for the Padres, and of course, I always point out that Southern California. I'm sure there's overlap with cable markets and their home market of Hawaii and all that stuff. But a good chunk of their revenue does come from the investments that they made around Petco Park. And if the Pirates could have done that, they very well could be in a completely different financial situation. But hindsight is always 2020.
Yeah. So, I mean, and this isn't like, forgiving nutting or, because there's, like we were saying, there was stuff that could have been done. And obviously, piece of that was McClatchy, and seeing he's no longer in the ownership because he didn't even have enough money to run the team and to keep the players. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that could have happened, but I think that's probably the more disheartening thing there is Scott is I always thought there was just like a little bit more money. Like I never thought there was like that we could get up to that, 120, 140, 150, $1 million payrolls. But I was thinking about like 110, 115. You know what I mean? Like thinking we could push that envelope. And like right now it's just thinking, oh man, like we kind of have to go to these games and support these teams because I mean there was the Post Gazette article where I mean some of the stuff may wouldn't I wouldn't say conflicting to a degree because I mean they talked about the Forbes estimates and how the Pirates were ranked to be making and bringing in a revenue, or I guess it would be profits or whatever it would be of $68 million, but saying that the payroll kind of follows the revenue from the concessions and from the ticket sales. Obviously, that's not a profit from it, but it's basically saying, okay, this is where we're going to keep this at because this is the money that we can guarantee. Like you're talking about the TV stuff going down and being cut in half and not knowing what's going to happen with that. Yeah, so I mean, you really don't know, with new CBAs or with different stuff, like what the revenue sharing is going to be, throughout Major League Baseball for other teams. Yeah, I mean, the money's there, and it's also being spent as DK showed you on stuff that we've talked about, at least at one time or another, is like the organizational costs. The Pirates, one thing I always praised Nutting for is that I mean, they always fed and housed their players in the minor leagues. They always have paid their players for extended spring training. So, like once spring training ends and the team goes north, or as we say now, south to Miami, the guys that are left there at Pirate City used to not get paid until they would start their season wherever they were assigned to one of those. The Pirates were one of the first teams that actually kept on paying those guys salaries and giving them money for that point in time. So it's organizational costs, it's upkeep of Pirate City, of Bradenton, it's paying for travel, it's for the staff that helps run PNC Park, for all of, I know people say, all of the athletics people that, it, we have a ton of them. And maybe it's, workout and maybe it won't. But yeah, I mean, you got to pay all of those people. I mean, it's the travel trucks, getting your equipment there. Like it's an organization.
All the computers they need, filling the printers with paper, the pens that are needed in the front office. I know it's not a very likely thing, but if word could spread, if this was 15 years ago and it was on the front page of the sports section of one of the local papers, maybe it would, not to knock DK, but any kind of naturally in any kind of market, a specialized sports website that only has a limited audience, and I'm sure he's doing great numbers and everything, but it's not reaching your general public in the way that sports radio or the newspaper used to. Um, but if it could get out, because it's still this popular conception that Nutting is choosing to not spend as much money, and he's pocketing millions and millions of dollars every year. So maybe, like you said, the concessions and the ticket sales are what are driving the payroll for the following season. Maybe people will show up more. And of course, that has to have a direct correlation to what the product on the field is. You can't expect casual fans, young people that are going out for dates, young families going out on the weekends, whatever, to invest their time and money in a bad product. You wouldn't go watch a bad movie that is bad, but it's just not. You have better ways to spend your money. And so maybe if the word can get out that, yeah, this isn't just Nutting pocketing a whole bunch of money, um, and not caring what the product is on the field, but that there are some financial pressures that are causing it to be the way it is. Maybe that you pick back up some of those people who are protesting, who are, I'm not go. You see it on Facebook all the time. I'm not going to any games until he actually spends some money on the team. Well, he's not going to spend money on the team because he doesn't have the money. If Because he's not going to put his, this dumb to say that a billionaire would put his own money in like that in a losing operation, but that's neither here nor there. But maybe you bring some of those people back, you sell more tickets, you sell more concessions, you can afford more players. Maybe there's some kind of if they can put a decent product on the field, maybe that can help build for next year. Because let's not forget they had $100 million payroll 10 years ago, and that's when they were winning, and that's when they were packing the stadium. I think it's mentioned in the article that the highest revenue from tickets and all that stuff that was in 2015, the last time they made the playoffs. So but that's why it's such a vicious cycle because you people will turn out when you have that product. But if people aren't turning out, then you not don't necessarily have the resources to provide them the product that'll make them want to come out.
Yeah, and I can't I try not to swear on this program, so it was a Mike Myers character from a movie back in the day. It's like I'm fat because I eat because I'm sad, and I'm sad because I eat. I think it was,
Was
or
it
because
that
I'm
hefty
fat.
gentleman that had unmarried parents?
Yes, 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 it was, and it's kind of like it's a catch 22 type scenario again, just because it's like, okay, we're trying to thread that needle, and if we can get a good product, then there'll be ticket sales, and then we can maybe have a better team because then there will probably be more money spent on the team. So it's Charrington coming in here to try to build a winner with young players in the system. So that's where it's definitely just very frustrating. And the other answer is possibly going to be that they're going to raise the price of ticket sales. Because I have been looking at games because I kind of pick out games throughout the season, and I definitely will say, I mean, obviously, I wasn't going to go to the first game anyway, and just because of the price of the tickets of that. And I heard people mentioning, well, why are they lining it up? They were talking. That was the other part. Is Skeens was announced as the opening day starter, and one of the first conversations I heard around social media was, well, why wouldn't they line him up to be the opening day, the home opener starter, so they could fill the stands and make more money? Well, they're going to make money no matter what on opening day because opening day is packed. They could have been the worst team in Major League Baseball the year before, and opening day will be sold out no matter who they're playing and like what the price of the tickets are. I'm just not going to pay it. But yeah, I mean, if the Pirates are smart, they start Skeens on the Monday against the Cardinals the day after the opening series, after all the Yankee fans evacuate town. And who sells tickets on a Monday? So if it lines up that way and people start to see that it's Skeens on a Monday versus the Cardinals, you'll sell more tickets on a Monday than you would pretty much any other Monday I know in the season with Skeen starting. So that was something that kind of also made me laugh. But I mean, I don't know if there's anything else to say about the financials other than stuff that we already knew. Like we're small. The Pirates are a small revenue team. They can't spend like the upper echelons. And now it's disheartening to find out that we may not even be able to spend like the lower echelon. We're gonna spend like the Rays, and we got to be the Rays. We do.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird that it would have been more comforting to find out that he really is just pocketing the money. That it's that the money is there and it's a choice not to spend it because that decision can always be changed. But now to know that the money just isn't coming in, yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow.
And now that we've spent like almost 20 minutes drowning our sorrows in financials, and basically me at the beginning saying, "Man, I wish we could just talk about baseball." Dude, let's talk about some baseball, but it's also going to be a little bit depressing in the beginning. Comes out, Jared Jones felt a little bit of elbow discomfort during a recent bullpen. Is shut down at least for spring. Will not be making another start in spring. The real bad news is that, to me, is that they're seeking a second opinion because, as you said before the show, Scott, you probably usually seek a second opinion because you didn't like the first one. Um, I don't know. Elbow discomfort on a player of Jared Jones's size, stuff that we've talked about, the way that he throws. It's just not sounding good to me whatsoever.
No, I don't know what the prognosis is going to be, but we've seen a lot of players that they prescribed rest at first, and then a few weeks later, a month later, they come back. Okay, well, yeah, surgery is going to be the option. Then you lose weeks to the rehab process. So just tear the band-aid off. If it needs to be done, it needs to be done. I think just by our nature as Pirate fans, we were pessimistic, and I think uh, I personally thought it was just a matter of time based on his build, his delivery, what we're finding out about max effort and increased rotation and spin on pitches, and just seeing, how he would just get gassed towards the end of his starts, and you're just looking at him like, can this guy throw another pitch? Because he just looks so tired. And so he's and that's, not a knock that he's going out there and he's giving it 100%. That's where I think, you know, 20, 30 years ago, guys weren't throwing 100% every pitch. They were pitching to contact. They were moving around the zone. Not everybody was throwing even in the 90s, really, let alone upper 90s. So they pitched deeper into games. That we didn't have the same elbow issues that we have now. But it is a reality of the sport currently, and the way things are going. It's a business, so these guys are trying to max out their earning potentials and catch attention and catch the eyes of teams that have the big checkbooks. Obviously, not the Pirates, but yeah, I think it was just a matter of time from what I was looking at, but I was hoping it wouldn't be this year because the high hopes that we had for the top 3 in the rotation. But, I mean, it's gonna be an open discussion if Jones is not gonna if he's gonna start the season on the injured list, which is very, very likely, who fills in that 5th spot in the rotation? Do you have Majinski, they've been trying to stretch out, maybe with a piggyback from, Ferguson, or Harrington, who looked really good in his last start, giving up just the home run to, you know, Bad News Bears himself, Nick Castellanos. Uh, Something bad must have happened somewhere because he hit that monster home run off of him. But then that was the only hit that he gave up his entire start. And the control is there. He doesn't blow you away with velocity, but it seems like he knows how to pitch. Um, it's against the Pirates' typical way of doing things. A guy like that with that kind of potential, you typically want to push him back to manipulate the service time. But if you have a need that needs to be filled, then maybe this is the opportunity. Do you want to get off to a hot start? Do you want to try to build, maybe take advantage of the Cubs starting 0-2 already? I don't know. Uh, Maybe keep them in last place, which would be nice, refreshing change of pace. But or do you want to have an arm like Harrington that can help you finish the season strong? It just kind of depends on how you want to play this.
Yeah, and I mean everybody knows from my end. I mean, I love Thomas Harrington. I've said a few times, and I know I've said on here during this off season when we were, kind of comparing Bubba Chandler and Thomas Harrington, and not comparing them as the type of pitchers they are, but comparing them as to how major league ready, at least I felt they were.
Right.
Thomas Harrington is just a polished product, just because he's not a guy that relies on that velocity. He's a guy that has a great pitch mix. He's a guy that has that command, that has that control. So pretty much like what you're seeing from Thomas Harrington and what people saw from him there, it's not flashy, it's not great from like that standpoint of the strikeouts and everything like that, the velocity. But you basically turn around and if he would be pitching at PNC Park, I would turn around and he'd be in the 7th inning
Hmm.
and have given up like 1 or 2 runs, not struck out a ton of people, but not really walked anybody either. Everybody knows I go to the whip. That's kind of where my mind goes. And with Thomas Harrington, I mean, other than a little bit of a blip in Greensboro a couple years ago, where the WHIP dipped above, like went above 1.3. It was 1.302. Last year overall, a 0.963. If you're down below one, that's like closer and elite reliever type numbers. I know that, Bubba is around there as well. I mean, but just for me, the guy, he doesn't really have anything to work on. For
Yeah.
Bubba, when I look at Bubba, it's just like, yeah, is the ceiling higher for Bubba? Yeah, absolutely. Like the ceiling is, probably just below Skeens. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or maybe that's even too high for him, but it's like kind of right there. Harrington is his ceiling is probably Mitch Keller. Like, if I had to compare to a type of degree,
Yeah.
but I would just see like him being a little bit more consistent in that what you kind of see is what you get. Uh, he's also a guy that, I mean, we're going to be talking about this again, is just innings limits. Is that he pitched like 100 and I believe 117 innings last year. It was actually a dip back from what he had pitched the year before, 127. Started out with a little bit of a shoulder injury, so he's not a guy that's kind of going to be able to pitch all season. And Carmen Mlodzinski, who you mentioned, who was a starter, back in Altoona a few years back. I mean, I think he was at like 69, 70 innings, for the entire year last year. That's kind of why, you know, even before Oviedo went down and we saw them building Mlodzinski up, we were like, maybe like, okay, are they kind of building him up for that Luis Ortiz role? That guy that could be a starter, but could also, maybe even pitch more often, because I know they used Ortiz in like, those late inning roles, different stuff like that. But yeah, now one injury and it's like, okay, is it Harrington? Is it Mlodzinski? And I think that everybody clearly thinks it's between those two. So, I mean, either one, I think I mean, it's obviously what you were kind of expecting from Jones. It's a step back from, but we really didn't know what we were going to get from Jones this year. I'm disappointed more because he was becoming more of a pitcher, I believed. He was mixing in that changeup, wasn't dialing up the velocity like it felt like as much. He wasn't, didn't feel like he was trying to throw 100. If it was good location and it was sitting 97, it was getting that rise, then okay, so be it. And I'm going to save my arm by doing some of these change ups, tossing those in. And that's more the frustrating piece to me, because it's like we didn't know what we were going to expect from him. Lights out last year at the beginning of the season, not great the second half of the season, which looks like a fairly average season overall. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely disappointing. But Mlodzinski's looked pretty good in the majors, yes, in a relief role.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Thomas Harrington, I just feel like he's one of those guys where the ceiling is like probably a middle of the order rotation guy, like a 3, but his floor is like a 5. Like, he's a major league starter. And I don't know. I don't know what direction they're going to go, but it kind of seems like they've built Mlodzinski back up. He threw 25 pitches one game, 48 the next, 65 the next. And as we know, Thomas Harrington getting the start the other day. So, I mean, it's kind of going to be something that we talked about before this show, and we'll get into more as we continue to talk, is playing the 40-man game. Like, how many guys are on the 40-man the roster spot thing? Thomas Harrington, non-roster invitee, obviously from within our system, but would need to be added to the 40-man, and Carmen Mlodzinski, who's already sitting there on the 40-man.
Yeah, I think that we'll get more into it because it's not the only position where those kind of decisions need to be made, and the 40-man spots need to be taken into consideration when you're trying to put this roster together. But I understand that Mlodzinski wants to start. I understand that that's where he feels comfortable because that's where he started coming up with. But based on the way that the bullpen is constructed, I mean, we don't even have a clear cut closer at this point. but I was hoping that Majinski could find his footing and stay like the eighth inning role this year. I'm not completely sold on Holderman in anything, beyond the seventh inning, just based on his performance when he does get those opportunities late in. So I would rather him, and I think that he would make a bigger impact based on where the Pirates are with their farm system. I feel like he would make a bigger impact in the back end of the bullpen versus the rotation. But like you said, deciding who's going to stay and who's going to go from the 40-man roster, if you decide to bring Harrington in, um, then that does have to come into consideration because that's where you're seeing the the progress of the organization. Yeah, the record stayed the same 2 years in a row, but when we're having these meaningful conversations of man, we got to add somebody to the 40-man, but I just don't know who we're going to lose. That's a good conversation to have. That's a good problem to have. It means that you've built depth, and it might not be the same kind of quality depth that other organizations have, but at this point, having few to nobody on the 40-man that you're super excited about losing is a step forward.
Yeah, and for me, like for the Majinski thing, and like you said, it's like ties kind of into the bullpen and into the closer role. I mean, Carmen took a step forward last year. Not that he performed poorly in 2023 when he was up here. He had a 2.25 ERA in 2023, a 1.278 WHIP. That's a little bit high for a reliever, but then a 3.38 ERA, and saw the WHIP come down to 1.184. I like him in the bullpen. I mean, and that's maybe like selfish of me. It's like, Carmen, I know you want to be a starter, buddy, but I mean, I feel like he could be kind of like that swing man because we've seen him start games. He's a guy that can go, more than one inning. He's a guy that can maybe get you through the order one time. I feel like that's where it's like having a guy who is that flexible, it can be helpful. And if it would just be like, okay, he's a starter, and we don't even know. I mean, it could be, hey, it's a Caleb Ferguson, Carmen Majinski game, and we're going to get them to go 7 innings combined to be able to kind of save the bullpen that way. So you're like a starter in name, but not really a starter. That could be something that could, like I said, save the 40-man spot. Because are you going to do that to bring Harrington up, or are you going to use this to maybe solidify the bullpen a little bit more with a guy that's performed, like a Ryan Baraki, somebody like that who you could put on the roster. But that, I mean, that still doesn't solve the closer position, because it's a position that I hate. I hate
Yeah.
other than the cool music, closer by committee. I think that I should probably get like a T-shirt with that on it somewhere or something, because I mean that's what I've been calling for a while here. The Rays do it, other teams do it, and it's playing the hot hand. Bednar has, even in his best season, had some injuries that have kept him out. Have had a bad few outings here or a bad month. In the end, it looks really really good. So for me, it's just kind of like play the hot hand. Like, what guy is throwing really well? Don't keep throwing this guy out there in the ninth inning just because you've named him your closer.
Yeah.
Play the situations, different stuff like that. And I think they have, I think like we've talked about before, a number of guys, including, Majinski, Nicholas, if he has the command, Santana,
Santana.
um,
Yeah.
you know, there's
That's
different
probably who
guys
I
in
would
there.
start with. That's probably who I would start with the season is, because you're not married to Bednar at this point. But yeah, Santana has looked really good. I think maybe giving him an opportunity in Miami would probably be where I would go.
Yeah, and we talked about bringing in Justin Lawrence and wanting him because he does also comes with some closer experience. I mean, so for me there, I mean, I don't know exactly what they're going to do. I mean, I don't know how to predict that. I guess we'll kind of just have to be the people that I mean, I kind of like being is just waiting and seeing what happens and then reacting to it a little bit. And it's, like I said, it's not, one of those other decisions where it kind of gets into it as well. The first base situation. Um, DJ Stewart seems to be the name that everybody has listed. I mean, I see it on roster resources. I've heard it from most podcasts, reading it in most articles where it's DJ Stewart. And I told you beforehand. I mean, if, and this is a big if the Horwitz injury only keeps him out for say 2 to 3 weeks of the regular season, and he's back up at the majors at that point in time, I don't know if I want to quote unquote burn a 40-man roster spot on that. And this is just, I mean, I think that's the opposite of a lot of people's thinking. People are just like, well, if it's only for a little bit, just see if he can get hot and kind of keep him going. And it's, if it's a longer term thing, then, let's have a tryout with the younger guys. My mind basically thinks if it's a short term thing, you could keep a Billy Cook up here, give him a run for like a couple weeks or something,
Yeah.
and then easily send him back down and just basically say, "Hey, Billy, you know what this is? It's a fill-in for Spencer for when he comes back." With DJ Stewart, I don't see the real positive in this. I mean, he catches a little bit of fire for like a week or two, like he did at the beginning of this spring training. Horwitz comes back. He's obviously the starter. The history of DJ Stewart shows you that he is going to fall off at some point in time. And then you've burned a 40-man spot at the beginning of the season for a guy that isn't going to make it on your roster past, May.
Yeah,
It's a very weird thing to me.
yeah, you have to have that longer term thought process. Yeah, it's not worth it to me. Even if he does get hot, even if he has that potential to get hot, it just if it's only gonna be so a lot of it depends on how long, like you said, how long Spencer Horwitz is gonna be out. If it is a week, 2 weeks, you know, maybe you just roll out there with a Jared Triolo most of that time. You don't worry about the matchups. You don't try to play the righty lefty thing. You just make him your everyday first baseman for a good chunk of that. You've got other guys on the roster, Billy Cook, Adam Frazier's played a little, very, very small amount of first base, but I'm sure he can handle. Just make do with what you already have, and not burn the roster spot, and then worry about the contributions that the person that you lost could have had long term. You're giving up on somebody because they would have to be DFA'd and they could potentially be lost to another team over a couple of weeks. I get it if it's a month or two, but a couple of weeks and you're going to give up on a guy, and you know that Stewart's not going to make it past when comes back. He may be the casualty of the move to bring him off the injured list. It just doesn't make sense to me to make that kind of decision for such a short period of time.
Yeah, and if he does make it, in my mind, it's almost like by default because he's only the only left-handed option that kind of plays first base. So Billy Cook and Nick York. I think that Billy Cook would be the better defender in there. But I mean York, I believe he didn't look good a little bit in there in spring training. I didn't get to see a ton of it.
Mhm.
Maybe for like one game. Didn't look super but yeah, he's just kind of learning the position. But I feel like he's the type of defender that could learn it. But they are punished because they are right-handers and not left-handers, and that would just be super frustrating to me. The other piece that people keep on saying is that DJ Stewart, well, he's just going to make the team because he's hitting, and they give his overall numbers for spring training, which do not look like how he's been performing recently. As we all know, he came out and hit a home run, a very win-aided home run in the first spring training game, and then proceeded to hit for the next few days. 11 plate appearances, average of 545, slugging, not even OPS, but slugging of 1.091. In the month of March, 29 plate appearances as we record here on Thursday night, 154 average,
Ouch.
a 231 slug. So he came out so hot that basically there's so few many at bats that like his numbers will always still kind of look good.
Mm-hmm.
But we've said it before. I would rather have a guy who is finishing spring training hot and is hitting well at the end of spring training than the guy that started out against people who were just trying to locate their pitches and it was their first few games of the year, than the guy who, once you get towards, the end of spring training where guys, are still working on some sorts of things, but are getting more polished as to what they're going to be, during the regular season, and have 29 plate appearances and have 10 of them be strikeouts and have a slug that Scott didn't even know existed. Really, I didn't. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know.
How does it go
I
that
didn't
low?
know. I didn't know sluggings went that low. Like 231. Like just absolutely insane. So that's the other part to me is you'd be adding a guy to the roster who's in the middle of a slump in spring training.
Do you want to lose Joshua Palacios for Rowdy Tellez 2.0?
or lower than Rowdy
Look,
Tellez. And the other part here, I mean, we're one more thing that I definitely want to talk about because it clicked into my head there when I was talking about you would want a guy that's hot. Endy Rodriguez has been hot and
yeah.
been getting hotter, and he's been getting hot as spring training and as he's gotten more at bats. And to me, that was like when I started looking at, the whole DJ Stewart thing, I'm just like, man, it just seems like Endy. So just some food for thought here, people. We gave our thoughts on this and what we would do. I believe it was like last episode. So go back and listen to that. Obviously, Endy, it's not a big sample size. 9 plate appearances in February, 143, 286, and then in March, right now, and the dude he's getting walks and stuff too, which is the craziest part to me. So he has 7 walks in the month of March, brings him up to 25 plate appearances, has a slash line of 444, a 600 on base percentage. The slug's not that high at the 778 for that point in time. But you know what, man? Like, if you are like showing that type of patience at the plate, and when you are swinging, you're making contact, you're getting a double in there, you're getting a home run in there, you're getting a triple in there. I mean, man, it's going to be hard to keep him off the roster. I don't know what the Pirates are going to do, but I think we said this before. It's kind of a good problem to have if Bart's hitting and at least one other catcher's hitting and maybe Henry starts hitting. That's a good problem to have.